Hi, my name is Katie Weatherup and I'm a shamanic practitioner out of San Diego, California, but I do a lot of distance work, so I work with clients all over the world. And every month I do a free conference call. You can log in or call in, and I talk about some shamanic topic. And in May, I have the good fortune to go to the UK with a group of people. So I'm leading people on retreat, and we get to go be inside the circle at Stonehenge and go up to the Orkney Islands and sink in at Glastonbury. And I'm really excited. But since I'll be out of the country for 2 weeks, I figured I would offer a video recording instead of a phone call so that people can still connect with my work if they feel called. But then I won't be trying to, squeeze it in before or after I get back. And then in May I'll be doing, in June after I get back, I'll go ahead and do a topic on past lives. So if you feel called, check out my website at handsoverheart.com or connect with me on Facebook, and there's information about when I'm doing these free calls, and you can be on the line with me and share in. So today I really want to talk about something that got sparked when I did a journey today to talk to my guides about coffee. So there's a lot of things that have to do with coffee for me that reveal a lot of deeper layers. And the deeper layer that gets revealed for me around the question of how much coffee I can balance, because I adore coffee, with how much my body really is supported by, because there's some health benefits to coffee, and then there's some things that are a little challenging, particularly for my body. Some people's bodies tolerate coffee much better, so I'm not making this universal. I'm just saying for me personally, there's a balancing that happens, and I wanted to talk to my guides about that. So I did a journey, and part of this, for the background of why this is even a question, has to do with the complexity for me of balancing yin and yang energy, doing active go with stillness and inner work, and navigating how much engagement I have with the unseen world. And the reason that I wanted to share this with other people is that there's a really high population of people who are navigating a personal and a transpersonal path. You could call it walking the path of the healer, but there are a lot of people who are very, very engaged on a soul level with the world around them, and then simultaneously living their personal everyday life that might involve picking up the dry cleaning or taking the kids to school, or doing art projects, or working a corporate job, or whatever you end up doing. And the measure of being an old soul, of being someone who's really connected into the transpersonal, is in no way what is your livelihood. In fact, there a lot of people, when they ask me the question about soul purpose, are asking from a perspective of, how do I find my soul purpose and then make it my livelihood? And the guides are all about separating that into two different questions. They're like, sure, by all means, have a livelihood that you enjoy. What will pay you the most money for the least aggravation and be the most pleasant for supporting yourself, that'll, that's really in alignment? How do you find work that's in alignment, right? Livelihood. But what could be what you have to offer to the world in terms of your soul purpose in being here, in terms of the vibration you carry, in terms of what could be expressed, should never be limited merely to what will humans, as what we're co-creating as a society, support economically, because there's just different value for things. So somebody might be really engaged with technology and able to develop a really cool app that connects people in really amazing ways, that's really aligned with soul purpose and livelihood, and that could be really successful. And there are people who do exquisite art that's really beautiful, but we're in a society that spends more on the latest technological gadget than we do on art, and that's just the reality. It's not to put right or wrong or good or bad, but there's just an invitation. Please don't limit your sense of soul purpose to what will other people pay me for in the world, because there's a great deal of value in what's expressed. And the gift of the modern era is that we can still have leisure time. So most of us have the opportunity to have whatever we're doing for our livelihood only be a piece of what we're doing with our lives. This was something I talked about a lot in my free call last month, which was walking the path of the healer. And I had filled up my recorder. It's been really busy lately, which is wonderful. I love the work that I get to do. But I hadn't realized how close I was to capacity, so it said, "You're full, you're done now," in the middle of the conference call, so I didn't get to record the whole thing. So forgive me for those of you for whom this is a repetition. But going back to the coffee thing, for me, my soul does a lot of work in the dream time, so I wander really far and wide, and I know that that's true for a lot of people. If you have the experience of waking up really tired, even after you've gotten a lot of hours of sleep, this may be part of what's going on. And so one of the ways to sort of self-assess whether, in addition to whatever personal experience you're having, there's a transpersonal part of your journey as a being incarnate here on earth at this time, is just to ask how alive the concept of contribution is. And I'm not saying how it's actualized in your life. So you may have an incredible desire to contribute and a fullness of life that doesn't allow you to contribute in the way you think you would like to, but how brightly does that flame burn inside of you? And for the people for whom it burns really bright, and this could be contribution in terms of helping people to heal and grow, it could be contribution in terms of environmental protection, it could be contribution in terms of beautiful artwork, it could be, you know, a huge range of things, but something that says, I really want my presence in the world to have a larger impact than just how it moves through me personally. That's a pretty good indication that there's some part of your journey that's transpersonal. And there are a lot of different ways that this can play out that's really rich and amazing. Just the process of living a happy life is a huge gift to the world. So if you can be in personal happiness, the vibration when you walk into the grocery store with a lot of other people who are maybe stressed and overwhelmed, it's a huge contribution. And one of the things I like to geek out on about energy is the concept of vibration. And if you strike a tuning fork with one note, another tuning fork that holds the same note will vibrate, it'll be activated. And so if human beings have the potential to play all the notes of the spectrum, from the most ecstatic to the darkest places, starting to understand what we bring into our world as far as what tuning forks we like pinged is really helpful. So how do I feel if this note is hit or that note is hit? Mara and I were geeking out over lunch, and one of the things we're talking about is scientists being able to watch what emotions propagate online because of the mechanism of Facebook. And you know, their conclusion was joy is the second fastest thing that propagates. So when people are really joyful, that spreads. But the fastest is rage. So if there's a lot of anger, that spreads really, really fast. And it makes sense because it's like a survival thing. If somebody's really angry or upset, everybody's kind of taking notice of like, what does this mean to me in terms of safety? Whereas if you're feeling relatively safe, then, you know, we have the space to really explore joy and wonderful things like that. So it's a little bit of a digression, but in terms of service to the world, if you just think about if you're constantly pinging your own joy note inside of you, you're helping to awaken it in everyone else. And so there's a huge contribution that comes from that. And one of the reasons I want to share this is, you know, a lot of people have the idea that contribution has to have to do with giving something from themselves to another person. And that's one beautiful form of contribution. But I think that, you know, healing practitioners and people who just have that path of the healer spark and a desire to be of service, there's a real balance in terms of self-care and what we give to others, and being able to be healthy, selfish, and take care of ourselves and really fill ourselves up can be hard. And so one of the things that I think it's really useful to understand is by being healthy and centered and feeling good, you're actively making a contribution, you're actively playing that note, and it helps other people to dial that note in. Likewise, the people who are working through some real challenging issues are putting maps into the collective consciousness of how other people can move through sexual trauma or physical pain or all of these kind of things. So if you're on a journey that's really intense and it doesn't leave a lot of room for, say, community service, still recognizing that you're still making contributions to the world, I think is really valuable. But coming back around and picking up the thread of coffee, I asked my guides about this because I'm really, part of my underlying premise of how I live my life is one of balance. I want to meet as many of my needs as possible in a way that doesn't sacrifice the needs of any other part of me. So I don't want to meet my need for all the great things that coffee provides, like productivity and mental focus and actually euphoria. There's a level of euphoria that comes. I feel really good with coffee in my system. And getting things done and all this great stuff. I don't want to meet that need at the expense of the health and balance of my physical body. And if I have coffee one day, that's great. If I have coffee 7 days in a row, that's really too much. And so there's this sort of constant dialing in of what'll take good care of my body, as well as paying attention to the potential for addiction. I want to make sure that I'm allowing that yin and yang balance to flow in both directions, and that I'm really making the right space for things. And so when I asked my guides, they took me to the spirit or essential nature of coffee. And as some of you know, the shamanic worldview says that everything has life, everything has spirit, and we can go and interact with those spirits if we train ourselves to approach things in that way. And they said something that was really cool and somewhat obvious upon reflection, but the message really resonated for me. The message from coffee was just treat it as sacred plant medicine. Only instead of the sacred plant medicine like ayahuasca or San Pedro that people are using to go out, the medicine of coffee and what it does for me is it brings me really present in ordinary reality. It brings me super present in my life, in the human flow, in being in this world. And on days when I've traveled really far in the dream time and I'm having trouble coming back and really being integrated in this world, because, you know, I'm blessed that I get to set my own schedule, so I can sleep in, you know, a lot of days. I just don't schedule clients before 11 o'clock because I know that I'm going to have this transition time from the time I wake up, no matter what time I go to bed, to being fully alert and present and, you know, sort of able to function in the world. And even with that, even with plenty of sleep and sleeping until I wake up naturally, it can still be this really difficult transition to bring myself super present into the world. And coffee is really good plant medicine for journeying into ordinary reality. And so for me, you know, I look at it like I do other things. Like I don't want it to only rely on coffee, but that I can use it as a sacred way to support myself in doing that very effectively. And sometimes it's just easier than trying to do other practices. You know, yoga will help bring me in my body. Breathwork will help bring me in my body. You know, there are a whole bunch of different ways that I can connect. But if I'm already struggling to come into alertness and get myself showered and dressed and out the door, when I'm trying to sort of wrangle my spirit back into the here and now because it's gotten really expansive, sometimes the last thing I want to do is a good, diligent daily practice. I wish I were somebody who just, loved my daily practices and was super consistent. I work with a lot of people. We talk a lot about daily practices because a lot of us have had the experience of how good we feel when we're consistent. And I certainly continue to aspire that way. And I'm also just, you know, keenly aware that for human beings, this can be really hard to do. So in terms of this this journey with coffee, it just gave me this different insight to say, oh wow, I can really embrace this in my life with a lot of honor and a lot of consciousness, and then find the right balance as I go forward. So that was part of the journey for today. Part of why I want to share this is that I think that it's something that a lot of us are navigating. We're in this time of incredible change. Our souls have come in to take part in it. And I noticed that there just seems to be an ongoing theme where we can make ourselves bad or wrong for not doing and accomplishing more. So first world, you know, and I'm most familiar with the United States, but I think that from what I know, it holds true in a lot of first world countries. There's a lot of value on productivity and accomplishment and doing things and have it all, you know. Alison Armstrong would say the myth of you can have it all is killing women, and she'll, go on to say, wow, it really, is hard when you have this story that you could go to work and work all day and hit the gym on the way home and come home and be like a really present, involved parent, and then you could do some deep meditation and, journaling and make a healthful meal and all of this, and then go to bed and get up and do it the next day. I mean, that's a lot of doing and presence in a day, and a lot of us have that story. And one of the things I'll talk about if you hang out with me is this idea of if you're going to remodel your kitchen, then it's really good to let the workers get in there and remodel the kitchen. So you will make them crazy if you tell them, okay, great, I want you to tear out the cabinets and I want you to put in a new sink and we're going to move the refrigerator over here and I want a brand new stove installed. But every day at 6 o'clock I need to be able to have full functionality so I can prepare a complete dinner. So, work on the remodels, but have it completely up and running 100% at 6 o'clock every day. Most contractors will go, sorry, you're nuts, I'm not taking the project. If you're the contractor, you do find someone who will do it for you like that, they're going to be really grumpy and they're going to charge you a lot and it's going to take a really long time. And yet it seems like because so much of what moves through us on a deeper level is unseen, it's very hard for us to have the patience when we're doing deep growth and change to be gentle with ourselves. And I'm no exception. One of the things I'll tell my students and my clients right up front is shamanism is the path of lightning. It's not the path of comfort. When you have really deep changes, I love the healing work I can do. I can help somebody to clear something that has haunted them their whole life, whether it be a phobia or an old story or something, in a single session. I can go back and I can clear it out of their past lives, I can clear it from this lifetime, I can move it out of their body, I can do all this really cool stuff. But I know if it's a deep healing, they're not going to be necessarily, they might, but they may not the next day be like up and running around and at full productivity. And it doesn't mean that they won't be able to do anything. They can probably accomplish some things, but there'll be some yin time, some going internal to let everything reorganize in order to then be in the new configuration. Because when you go in and make changes at the soul level, it then affects the energetic body, which then affects the physical body, which then affects all of our circumstances. And the energy from all this change comes out of the energy that we might have to run around and be super productive in the external world. And in this window of time when we've been building up to 2012, and now that we're on the other side of 2012 with all the intense astrological events and energetic movement, it's just a time that's very, very full. And living in a society that's out of balance with yin and yang, it can be really hard to go into the yin. And when we do, it can let us feel a lot of the emotions that we may not have been dealing with. So there can be shame and self-judgment and pain and grief and a lot of things that we were kind of pushing away and not dealing with it because we don't have a society that's super functional or good at dealing with emotions. We struggle with that on the whole. And so the experience can be something that a lot of people spend their life frantically running away from, of trying to, sort of earn their own self-esteem through productivity and accomplishment, and having a lot of feelings come up when they get exhausted and they go into stillness, associating stillness with exhaustion. So there's just a lot of layers here, and I'll be honest, I teach this stuff. I have an incredible awareness of how much healthier and more balanced and happy I am when I balance yin and yang, how important shadow work is. And I still really love coffee because it'll swing me to the yang side of things. It'll swing me into movement and productivity and getting things done, and I love that. And part of my relationship with coffee is just, balancing it so that I don't swing it too much, so that I'm not using this external thing not as sacred plant medicine to help me center in my life and be effective, but as a drug of choice to avoid some of the more uncomfortable territory of yin and stillness. So it's a complicated dance for me. And I just wanted to speak into this because if I could just have everyone listening to this, whatever, whether it's 2 people or 100, if I could just give you the gift of being kind to yourself and believing that, when you're tired and you need to lie down, you haven't done anything wrong. And being able to be gentle and kind about yin time and stillness and going within. And really understanding that as a human soul on earth at this time, you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. When the tsunami hit Japan, I was really connected to the energy that was moving through. And it wasn't because I couldn't manage my own sadness about what people were going through, or I was overly engaged in empathy. It was that my soul was really passionate about helping the souls of the people who died to transition to the other side, of helping the destiny paths on how much radiation spilled out of the damaged nuclear reactors be as gentle as it possibly could. It was this powerful moment that had reverberations throughout the world, and my soul was really called to stand as part of helping and supporting whatever that gift, whatever that opportunity was to move through the world. And I'm not going to tell you that I, Katie Weatherup, as a human being, even understand all of what was going on. Because I'm a skilled shamanic practitioner, I could track what my soul was doing. I could know that there was a part of me that was deeply engaged. But my first clues were just, I couldn't sleep enough to not be tired, and I felt unmotivated and lethargic during the day, and there was nothing that was particularly wrong. And then, of course, I started asking the questions, hey, what's going on? How am I out of balance? And was like, oh, wow, my soul's just really engaged with that. And so sometimes our brains are so good at coming up with answers. We'll ask ourselves the question of, why am I so tired today? And our brains sometimes come up with really scary answers. What if I have cancer? What if I this? What if I that? Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm not good enough. I should be eating less sugar. I should this. And I'm not going to say that, there isn't, I'm constantly leaning into the balance of how do I get enough exercise and take care of my body and do it in a holistic way, so I'm not whipping myself and punishing myself, but there's this dynamic tension between all these different needs and places that help me to really be in my sweet spot. And so I just want to sort of remind everyone that, when we have an event like the eclipse or a grand cross, or something gets stirred up that, my grandfather passed recently, and it wasn't that I was super close to him. He hadn't spoken to the family for the most part in a really long time, and so I didn't feel it as a personal loss, but I certainly felt the energy move for my family as a whole. There was this reorganization based on his passing that happened on this really deep, subtle shamanic layer, and it affected me. So it touched me deeply. It just didn't touch me on the emotional matrix. So my emotional matrix was really quiet and mellow. How do I feel about this? Not really having a reaction. I wish him well. He's in my prayers. That kind of thing. But on this deeper level, the connections of the ancestral movement of my last living grandparent passing created these ripples, and they showed up in the dream time, and they showed up in just my presence in the world. And because I'm incredibly energetically sensitive, which is frankly sometimes really inconvenient and really a challenge, I just felt the ripples. I was aware of the nuance. And so I just really want to invite people to honor the yin-yang balance, to honor stillness, and know that we're in a society that gives us a lot of messages about productivity and doing being how we create our value. And so we can be fighting any natural tendencies to go still, and we can also be fighting a lot of messages from the outside that tell us that that's wrong and bad, in order to just come into a healthy balance, in order to just come into a right alignment with it. And the other piece is recognizing that, one of the challenges of the modern era, which is amazing. I love living in a first world country in, 2014. I get to get on a plane and go to the UK and have that as part of my life experience while living here in California. I mean, wow, it just so many gifts of people I get to be connected to because I have the internet, because they don't live next door to me. They don't live within walking or horseback riding distance. And I love the diversity of flavors and the beautiful things that I can have in my house. There's so many gifts of the modern era. And at the same time, especially in San Diego, there an endless number of possibilities. If I log on to Facebook and I looked at what was going on tonight, I'm probably invited to at least 5 different events that would really speak to me, that really, are intriguing and enticing. And I'll probably end up staying home tonight because, I'm in more of a yin cycle right now. Much as a part of me wants to fight it and really would love to be more social, more active. At the end of the day, I'm an introvert. I love people. I love the people I'm connected to, and I replenish my energy with stillness and downtime. And sometimes that's extremely frustrating because there are a lot of yummy offers. There are a lot of things that really speak to me. And so, again, part of my balance and my dance is, how can I manage my introversion in a way that is as effective as possible so I can also meet my needs for connection and stimulus and excitement and all of those interesting and creative balances. But again, the biggest thing to take away from this is just understanding that there's a whole lot that's going on for us on a beingness level that's not transparent to our human self having the stream of consciousness experience. And so trusting the wisdom when you really want extra sleep, or you need to go into stillness, or emotions are rising. A lot of times we try to find explanations for emotions, and sometimes there is, but most of the time I find if I have emotions moving through, there may be 5% about what's happening in my life now, and a great deal more about what might be releasing from some other time. And in the healing process, we don't feel the damage or pain that's held really deep inside of ourselves. We feel it when it arrives at the top layer, because the top layer is the most sensitive, because that's what's giving us information about the world. And so if something is actually clearing out of me and being released, it's going to feel the most uncomfortable when it's almost completely gone at the very, very end of the process. So I could wake up one morning and my heart could literally physically ache, not acutely because I've done a lot of clearing work, but enough that it's like noticeable. I'm like, ow, that's not very comfortable, as well as an emotional contraction. Nothing happened that was wrong, nothing is bad, I'm not upset about anything. It's just that my heart is having more space and able to offload some piece of energy or story that doesn't serve. And I don't need to understand it. My conscious mind will make up a story and it'll probably be wrong, and so I don't need to understand it. For me, it's more about just recognizing it, honoring it, and holding space for it. And knowing how much work I've done around this, and the fact that I'm still not always on my game with it, and I can still find myself making myself wrong and bad, I just really want to emphasize kindness, seeing yourself with kind eyes, allowing yourself to feel that way, and then finding what your best strategies are for self-care given whatever your needs are. So for me, sometimes that looks like a cup of coffee, and sometimes it looks like a nap in the middle of the day, and sometimes it looks like just sitting with the shadow of tired and doing what I need to do anyway until I can create space and time to rest. I have a lot of different ways that I work with it, but knowing that there's more going on that meets the eye can be really helpful to being gentle and kind with yourself in your journey. So I hope this information and recording supports you, and you can learn more about my work at my website, which is handsoverheart.com. I've got a new booking system up so that you can actually just go on and choose an appointment time if you feel called to have a soul retrieval or a shamanic healing. And I just want to say, soul retrieval is awesome. I really love sharing that. it makes life so much easier, and there are just a lot of things that we're going through, and having all of your energy and essence inside of you and available to you and usable as you go through life makes things a lot easier. And it's something I can probably do for you in a single session, unless you've had, you're like the person who's had vastly more trauma than the average person. Then it would be 2 sessions. But in general, for 95% of my clients, I can get your parts back in a single session. So I really love that I get to do this work, and I want to put out an invitation before I sign off to come and work with me if you feel called. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope this really supports you.